You think you're being outsmarted. You believe you're the victim in this grand theater of human manipulation. You point fingers at the cunning boss, the manipulative friend, the scheming politician, the silent treatment from your partner. But what if I told you something that would shatter that comfortable delusion? What if the person outsmarting you most effectively isn't some master manipulator pulling strings from the shadows? It's you, conspiring against yourself every single day. You've been trained to look for the enemy outside, to scan for threats, to identify the villains, to prepare your defenses against external attacks. But Nietzsche understood something you refuse to see. The most common lie is that which one lies to oneself. The person outsmarting you most effectively isn't even speaking. They don't need to. You're doing all the work for them. Right now, as you watch this, you're probably thinking, "Not me. I'm too smart for that. I see through manipulation. I know when someone's trying to control me." And that exact thought is how you've been outsmarted your entire life. Your confidence in your own awareness is the very blindness that makes you vulnerable. This isn't about learning tricks to manipulate others. This isn't about becoming the puppet master instead of the puppet. This is about recognizing the psychological machinery that's been running your life while you slept. The unconscious programs that make you predictable, controllable, and ultimately dispensable in the games that matter. Because the greatest con artists don't need words. They understand something about human nature that you've spent your whole life denying, that you are not the rational, conscious, choice-making being you believe yourself to be. You are a collection of unconscious drives, desperate needs, and psychological wounds wrapped in the costume of logical thought. Let me paint you a picture of your daily life, and I want you to tell me if you recognize the character in this tragedy. You wake up and immediately reach for your phone, not because you need information, but because you need to know that you still exist in the minds of others. You scroll through social media, comparing your internal experience to others' external performances, feeling either superior or inadequate, never simply present. You get dressed, but not for yourself. You choose clothes that signal membership in your tribe, that communicate your status, that hide the parts of yourself you've been taught to be ashamed of. You look in the mirror and see not who you are, but who you think you should be. You go to work and spend 8 hours performing competence, agreeability, enthusiasm, emotions you may or may not feel, but emotions you know are expected. You bite your tongue in meetings, not because you have nothing valuable to say, but because speaking truth might disturb the carefully constructed fiction that everyone is doing their best. You come home and wonder why you feel empty, why nothing seems to belong to you, why you feel like a stranger in your own life. And you blame external circumstances, your job, your relationships, your lack of opportunities. But you never look at the one constant in all these scenarios, your own complicity in your own diminishment. Nietzsche called this herd morality, the unconscious drive to blend in, to avoid the discomfort of standing alone, to choose the safety of the crowd over the danger of authentic existence. But he didn't just describe it as a social phenomenon. He revealed it as a psychological disease, a cancer of the soul that kills everything vital within you. And here's the brutal truth. Every time you make that choice, every time you prioritize comfort over truth, approval over authenticity, fitting in over standing out, someone is outsmarting you without saying a single word. They don't need to manipulate you. They just need to let your own psychological machinery do the work. How many times have you walked into a room and immediately scanned for approval? Not consciously, you're too sophisticated for that. But watch your body language, your breathing, the subtle shift in your posture depending on who's present. You're constantly calibrating yourself based on others' perceived expectations. How many decisions have you made, not based on what you wanted, but on what would make others comfortable? How many times have you swallowed your truth because speaking it might disturb the herd? How many authentic impulses have you murdered in the name of keeping the peace? Let me tell you what's happening in those moments. You're not being considerate. You're not being mature. You're being psychologically enslaved by your own terror of rejection, and you've convinced yourself that this slavery is virtue. Think about your last argument. Really think about it. Were you defending truth, or were you defending your ego? Were you seeking understanding, or were you desperately trying to avoid the abyss of being misunderstood? The person who remained silent while you frantically explained yourself, they weren't being passive. They were watching you destroy your own credibility, one word at a time. They understand something about power that you've never grasped. The one who needs the interaction least controls it most. While you're performing your intelligence, your righteousness, your reasonableness, they're watching you reveal every psychological weak point you possess. Nietzsche saw this pattern everywhere. He who would learn to fly one day must first learn to stand and walk and run and climb and dance. One cannot fly into flying. But you've been trying to fly before you learned to stand in your own truth. You've been seeking power before you understood your own powerlessness. You've been trying to control others before you gained control over yourself. And that's exactly how they want it. The silent ones, the ones who seem to effortlessly command respect, who never seem to chase or beg or explain. They've learned something you refuse to learn, that your desperate need to be understood is your greatest weakness. Every time you over-explain, you're saying, "I don't trust my own authority." Every time you seek validation, you're saying, "I don't believe in my own worth." Every time you argue with someone who's not listening, you're saying, "I will abandon my own peace to pursue the fantasy of changing your mind." The system isn't broken. It's not failing to produce rational, thinking individuals. It's working exactly as designed, to create psychological sheep who believe they're wolves, consumers who think they're making choices, followers who imagine they're leading their own lives. You've been conditioned to believe that intelligence means having the right opinions, the correct facts, the approved responses. You collect information like armor, as if knowing more about the world will protect you from your own inner emptiness. But Nietzsche saw through this charade. There are no facts, only interpretations. The person outsmarting you understands that facts don't matter. Psychology does. While you're busy being right, they're busy being effective. While you're constructing logical arguments, they're appealing to your unconscious drives, your need for belonging, your terror of uncertainty, your addiction to comfort, your desperate hunger for significance. Look at how you consume information. Do you seek truth, or do you seek confirmation? When you scroll through social media, are you learning, or are you feeding the beast of your own biases? Every click, every like, every share, you're not expressing your authentic self. You're performing a version of yourself that you think others want to see. And the masters of this game, they don't need to say a word. They simply create the stage and watch you dance. They understand what Nietzsche called the will to power, but not power over others. Power over the narrative, power over the frame, power over what you think you want. The algorithm doesn't force you to waste hours scrolling. It simply presents you with exactly what your psychological weaknesses crave. The manipulative person in your life doesn't force you to give them attention. They simply remain silent while your own insecurities fill the void with desperate attempts at connection. Consider the last time someone gave you the silent treatment. What did you do? Did you respect their space and tend to your own peace? Or did you escalate, pursuing them with texts, calls, explanations, apologies for crimes you didn't commit? That pursuit, that desperate dance, that's not love, that's not care, that's psychological addiction, and you're both the dealer and the addict. You are not the victim of manipulation. You are the co-creator of your own imprisonment. And the most sophisticated prisoners are those who've decorated their cells so beautifully that they've forgotten they're in prison at all. Here's what the truly powerful understand that you don't. Silence is not the absence of communication. It's the purest form of it. When someone refuses to engage with your emotional chaos, when they don't rise to your bait, when they remain unmoved by your desperate attempts to provoke a reaction, they're not being cruel. They're not playing games. They're demonstrating mastery. They've transcended the need to prove anything to you. And what do you do in response? You escalate. You explain. You justify. You perform increasingly dramatic versions of yourself, hoping to elicit some response, any response, because their silence feels like death to your ego. You hand them a complete psychological profile while they reveal nothing about themselves. This isn't cruelty. This is economy of energy. They've learned what you refuse to learn, that most conversations are not exchanges of ideas, but mutual masturbation of egos. They've learned that most people don't listen to understand, but listen to respond. They've learned that your need to be heard is often more about your own psychological wounds than about any truth you're trying to communicate. Nietzsche spoke of the eternal recurrence, the idea that we're condemned to repeat the same patterns forever unless we fundamentally change our relationship to existence. Look at your relationships. How many times have you had the same argument with different people? How many times have you fallen for the same psychological traps? The person outsmarting you doesn't need new tricks. They just need to wait for you to repeat your old patterns. They know that when faced with silence, you'll project your own fears onto that void. They know that your need to be understood will drive you to over-explain. They know that your terror of abandonment will make you chase what retreats. But here's what you're missing. Their silence isn't about you. It's about them. They've learned to conserve their energy for interactions that actually matter. They've learned to distinguish between people who want to understand and people who want to be right. They've learned that your inability to sit with discomfort is not their emergency. The individual has always had to struggle not to be overwhelmed by the tribe. But you've never learned to struggle. You've learned to surrender, to conform, to seek the comfort of the herd, and then wonder why you feel powerless. The silent ones aren't antisocial. They're not damaged. They're not playing hard to get. They've simply realized something you haven't. Your reaction is your responsibility, not theirs. Your emotions are your territory to manage, not their obligation to fix. When you gaze long into an abyss, the abyss also gazes into you. But what if the abyss isn't external? What if it's the unconscious drives that govern your every choice while you maintain the illusion of rational decision-making? You think you choose your battles. You believe you decide when to speak and when to stay silent. But look deeper. When do you feel compelled to argue? When someone threatens your identity? When do you feel the need to explain yourself? When someone's silence makes you feel invisible? When do you break first in a standoff? When the discomfort of uncertainty becomes unbearable? These aren't choices. These are compulsions. Psychological programs running in the background of your consciousness, driving your behavior while you tell yourself stories about your own agency. And the person outsmarting you has mapped your compulsions like a general maps enemy territory. They know that you'll mistake their calm for agreement. They know that you'll fill their silence with your own projections. They know that your need to be seen as good, as right, as reasonable will drive you to compromise your position before they even engage. Let me show you how deep this goes. Think about the last time someone important to you was upset but wouldn't tell you why. What happened inside your body? Anxiety, panic, a desperate need to fix whatever was wrong. You probably apologized for things you didn't do, offered concessions you didn't want to make, twisted yourself into psychological pretzels trying to restore harmony. But what if their upset had nothing to do with you? What if they were processing their own internal experience and your frantic attempts to manage their emotions were actually intrusive? What if your need to fix their mood was really about your own terror of being disliked? You've been trained to believe that good people are accommodating, that strength means yielding, that wisdom means seeing all sides. But Nietzsche warned against this slave morality, the value system of the powerless, designed not to create strength, but to make weakness feel virtuous. You've adopted the values of the powerless and wonder why you feel powerless. You've made yourself responsible for everyone else's emotional weather and wonder why you're constantly exhausted. You've turned yourself into an emotional support animal for a world that doesn't even notice your sacrifice. The person who remains silent while you exhaust yourself explaining isn't being stubborn. They're being economical. They're not being rude. They're practicing self-preservation. They understand something about energy that you've never grasped. The one who cares least controls most. And you? You care about everything. You care about being understood, being liked, being right, being fair. Your caring is bleeding you dry, and they don't need to say a word to accelerate the process. Here's the moment where the comfortable delusions die. Ready? You are not being outsmarted despite your intelligence. You are being outsmarted because of your need to appear intelligent. You are not losing because you're too nice. You are losing because you're performing niceness to avoid the authentic confrontation that might actually change something. Every time you choose harmony over truth, every time you avoid difficult conversations to maintain peace, every time you silence your authentic response to keep others comfortable, you are training the world to outsmart you. You are teaching people that your boundaries are negotiable, that your truth is optional, that your peace is less important than their comfort. And then you wonder why you feel invisible, why your relationships feel superficial, why you attract people who take more than they give. It's not bad luck, it's psychological economics. You've set your price at zero and wonder why nobody values what you offer. Nietzsche called this the death of will, not a literal deity, but the death of external moral authorities that give meaning to suffering. You've killed your own inner authority and replaced it with the approval of others. You've traded your authentic power for the illusion of being liked, and now you wonder why you feel powerless. The person who doesn't need to convince you of anything has already won. They've transcended the game you don't even realize you're playing. While you're fighting for respect, they've moved beyond needing it. While you're seeking validation, they've become their own source of worth. Look at your social media behavior. How much time do you spend crafting the perfect post, choosing the right filter, waiting for likes and comments? Each like feels like a small validation, each ignored post like a small death. You've turned your self-worth into a crowdsourced project, and you wonder why you feel anxious all the time. What does not destroy me makes me stronger. But you've never allowed yourself to be destroyed. You've never allowed your false self to die, so your authentic self could be born. You've protected your ego so carefully that you've never discovered your true power. The brutal truth? You don't want to be powerful. You want to feel powerful while remaining safe. You want to win without risking real loss. You want to be seen as strong while avoiding the isolation that real strength sometimes requires. You want to be the hero of your story without doing anything heroic. You want to be respected without earning respect. You want to be loved without becoming lovable. And this impossible equation, this attempt to get the rewards without paying the price, this is what makes you so easy to outsmart. Let's talk about the masks you wear, because understanding them is crucial to understanding how others manipulate them. There's the professional mask. the competent, agreeable team player who never rocks the boat. This mask believes that if you just work hard enough, if you're just nice enough, if you just don't cause problems, you'll be rewarded. But this mask is outsmarted by those who understand that organizations reward those who solve problems, not those who avoid creating them. While you're being accommodating, someone else is being indispensable. There's the social mask, the fun, easygoing person who never has strong opinions about anything controversial. This mask believes that being liked is more important than being known. But this mask is outsmarted by those who understand that people respect authenticity more than agreeability. While you're being pleasant, someone else is being memorable. There's the relationship mask, the understanding, supportive partner who always puts the other person's needs first. This mask believes that love means self-sacrifice, that caring means caretaking, that intimacy means having no boundaries. But this mask is outsmarted by those who understand that healthy relationships require two whole people, not one person trying to be enough for two. Each of these masks was developed for good reasons. They protected you from rejection, from conflict, from the terror of being truly seen and potentially found wanting. But what protected you as a child is imprisoning you as an adult. Nietzsche wrote about the three metamorphoses of the spirit: the camel, the lion, and the child. The camel bears burdens, accepting what others load onto its back. Most people never move beyond this stage. They remain pack animals, carrying the expectations and demands of others until they break under the weight. But some become lions. Lions destroy. They tear down the false values, the inherited beliefs, the thou shalts that govern the camel's life. Lions learn to say no, to roar, to claim their territory. But even this isn't the final stage. The final metamorphosis is into the child, the creator of new values, the being who acts from authentic impulse rather than reaction to others. The child doesn't need to prove anything because it's too busy creating its own world. Which stage are you in? Are you still carrying everyone else's emotional baggage, trying to be what they need you to be? Are you roaring against the constraints but still defining yourself in opposition to others? Or have you moved beyond both compliance and rebellion into authentic creation? So what does it mean to outsmart someone without saying a word? It means becoming so authentically yourself that you no longer need others to validate your existence. It means developing what Nietzsche called amor fati, love of fate, love of your circumstances exactly as they are, without needing to change others or convince them of anything. When you truly accept what is, you stop feeding the psychological games that keep you trapped. You stop being reactive because you no longer need the world to be different than it is. You stop explaining yourself because you don't need others to understand you in order for you to understand yourself. This requires killing the parts of you that crave constant validation. It requires accepting that you will be misunderstood, that you will be alone sometimes, that you will make choices that others disapprove of. The higher we soar, the smaller we appear to those who cannot fly. But here's what happens when you stop needing to be understood. You become magnetic to those who do understand. You stop attracting energy vampires because you're no longer broadcasting the signal that you're available to be drained. You stop repelling authentic people because you're no longer performing a false version of yourself. Your silence becomes not an absence, but a presence so powerful that it changes the entire dynamic of every room you enter. People sense something different about you. They can't manipulate you with guilt because you've made peace with being the villain in their story. They can't control you with fear because you've accepted that some losses are necessary for authentic victory. This doesn't mean becoming cold or cruel. It means becoming selective. It means understanding that your energy is finite and precious, that your attention is a gift, not a given. It means recognizing that saying yes to everything means saying no to what matters. The person who has learned to be comfortable in their own silence doesn't need to win arguments because they're no longer fighting for external validation. They don't need to prove their worth because they've moved beyond the marketplace of ego where worth is negotiated with others. They've discovered what Nietzsche called self-overcoming, the ability to transcend not just others' limitations, but their own. They've learned that the ultimate victory is not over other people, but over the parts of themselves that made them vulnerable to others' manipulation in the first place. For the next month, not a week, but a full month, say nothing that isn't absolutely necessary. Don't explain yourself. Don't justify your choices. Don't defend your positions. Don't fill uncomfortable silences with nervous chatter. Don't apologize for existing. Don't ask for permission to take up space. This isn't about becoming antisocial. It's about becoming conscious. It's about observing the compulsions that drive you to speak when silence would serve you better. It's about discovering who you are when you're not performing for anyone. Watch what happens. Watch how your need to be understood reveals itself as a desperate addiction. Watch how others' discomfort with your silence exposes their own insecurities. Watch how your authentic power emerges, not from what you say, but from who you are when you're not trying to be anyone. Most of you won't do this. You'll tell yourself it's antisocial, that it's game playing, that it's not who you are. But that resistance, that desperate clinging to the familiar patterns of people-pleasing and over-explaining, that is who you are. And it's exactly why you keep getting outsmarted. You'll rationalize. You'll say this is manipulative, that relationships require communication, that silence is passive-aggressive. But notice, these objections all assume that your current way of communicating is working. Is it? Are your relationships deeply satisfying? Do you feel truly seen and valued? Do you command genuine respect or just polite tolerance? Become who you are. But first, you have to be willing to discover who that is. And that discovery happens not in the noise of constant explanation, but in the powerful silence of someone who no longer needs the world's permission to exist. The choice is yours, but choose quickly. Every moment you spend explaining yourself to people who don't deserve explanations is a moment stolen from becoming the person you were meant to be. Every energy unit you waste trying to convince others of your worth is energy that could be invested in actually becoming worthy of your own respect. Will you choose the uncomfortable truth of authentic power or the comfortable lie of perpetual performance? Will you become the silent force that shapes reality or remain the noisy victim who reacts to it? Your silence, or your desperate need to break it, will give me my answer. The laboratory of your life awaits. The experiment begins now, and remember, the weak shout, the strong remain silent, but the wise choose when to do both. What will you choose?